What happens when Hollywood's most outspoken, tough guy meets daytime television's most controversial host? Mark Wahlberg thought he was walking into a routine promotional appearance on The View. But what unfolded was an explosive confrontation that had producers scrambling and security on high alert. This wasn't just another celebrity interview gone wrong. This was a masterclass in how personal grudges can destroy professional boundaries. Make sure to subscribe and drop a comment because this story gets more intense with every passing minute. Mark Wahlberg adjusted his tie as he walked onto The View set, flashing his trademark smile to the studio audience. The applause was warm, welcoming even. But there was something in Joy Behar's eyes that immediately put him on edge. He'd done hundreds of interviews, faced down critics and skeptics, but something about Joy's expression told him this wasn't going to be the friendly chat his publicist had promised. "Welcome back to The View. I'm Joy Behar," she began, her voice carrying that familiar edge that regular viewers knew meant trouble. "We're here with Mark Wahlberg. And Mark, I have to say, I've been looking forward to this conversation for a very long time." Mark settled into his chair, that Boston confidence radiating from every gesture. "Thanks for having me, Joy. Always good to be here with you ladies." "Oh, is it though?" Joy's smile was sharp, predatory. "Because I seem to remember you having some pretty strong opinions about people in my line of work. Something about actors thinking they are political experts." The audience shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't the usual playful banter they expected from celebrity interviews. Mark's jaw tightened slightly, but he kept his composure. "I think you might be taking something out of context there, Joy." "Am I though?" "Because I have the quote right here." Joy shuffled through her papers with theatrical precision. Quote, "Some of these Hollywood types need to stick to what they know instead of lecturing working-class Americans about politics." Ring any bells? Mark leaned forward, his voice steady but firm. "That wasn't directed at anyone specific. Joy, and frankly, I stand by it. There's a difference between having opinions and talking down to people." "Talking down to people," Joy repeated, her voice dripping with mock concern. "That's rich coming from someone who's made a career out of playing the tough guy from the streets. Tell me, Mark, when exactly did you become the spokesperson for working-class Americans?" The temperature in the studio seemed to drop several degrees. Mark's co-hosts, Whoopi Goldberg and the others exchanged glances that screamed discomfort. This was supposed to be a light-hearted promotional segment, not a political ambush. "I never claimed to be anyone's spokesperson," Mark replied, his Boston accent becoming more pronounced as his frustration grew. "But I grew up in Dorchester. Joy, I know what it's like to struggle, to work multiple jobs just to get by. I didn't grow up in some ivory tower making jokes about people's real problems." Joy's eyes flashed with anger. "Ivory tower? That's what you think this is? I've been working in this business longer than you've been famous, buddy. I've earned my right to have opinions and I've earned my right to call them out when they are wrong." Mark shot back. "You sit here every day making millions telling people how they should think, how they should vote, how they should live their lives. Meanwhile, the people you're lecturing are trying to figure out how to pay rent." The studio audience was completely silent now, the tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. Whoopi tried to interject. "Maybe we should take a quick break," but Joy waved her off dismissively. "No, no. I want to hear this," Joy said, leaning back in her chair with a smug expression. "Please, Mark, enlighten us. Tell us how we should be using our platform. Should we just stick to fluff pieces? Talk about the weather? Maybe discuss your latest movie without asking any real questions?" Mark's hands clenched into fists on the table. "You know what, Joy? You're proving my point right now. You're not interested in having a conversation. You're interested in being right. You're interested in making me look bad because you don't like what I said. What you said was ignorant." Joy snapped. All pretense of civility gone. "You want to talk about working class? I grew up in Brooklyn. My father was a truck driver. Don't lecture me about struggle. Then why do you act like you're better than everyone else?" Mark's voice was rising now, his famous temper starting to show. "Why do you sit there every day mocking people who disagree with you, making fun of their beliefs, their values?" Joy laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the studio. "Their values? You mean like your values? The same values that got you arrested how many times as a kid? The same values that had you committing hate crimes?" The studio went dead silent. Mark's face went pale, then red with fury. "That's a low blow even for you, Joy." "Is it though? Because if we're talking about values, maybe we should talk about your past. Maybe we should talk about the real Mark Wahlberg, not this sanitized Hollywood version you've created." Mark stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. You know what? This is exactly what I'm talking about. You can't have a disagreement without making it personal. You can't debate ideas without trying to destroy someone. Sit down, Mark, Joy said, her voice cold. We're not done here. Yeah, we are, Mark replied. But he remained standing, his hands shaking with rage. This isn't an interview. It's a hit job, and I'm not going to sit here and let you tear me apart for your entertainment. The camera captured every moment of the escalating confrontation. The producers in the control room frantically trying to figure out how to handle the situation. This was live television at its most unpredictable, and nobody knew what would happen next. Joy's eyes gleamed with satisfaction as she watched Mark's composure crumble. She had him exactly where she wanted him, and she wasn't about to let him walk away. Oh, so now you're going to run away. That's very mature, Mark. Very working-class hero of you. Mark's fists clenched tighter. I'm not running from anything, Joy. I'm choosing not to participate in your circus. My circus. Joy laughed. That same harsh sound that was beginning to grate on everyone's nerves. You came on my show, Mark. You're a guest in my house. And if you can't handle the heat, maybe you shouldn't have stepped into the kitchen. Whoopi tried again to intervene, her voice strained with obvious discomfort. Joy, maybe we should move on to talking about Mark's new film. No, Whoopi, Joy said without taking her eyes off Mark. I think our audience deserves to know who they are really dealing with here. Mark wants to talk about values and working-class credentials, so let's talk about them. Mark slowly sat back down, his jaw set in a hard line. Fine, let's talk. But let's keep it honest, Joy. Something you seem to struggle with. Honest. Joy's voice pitched higher. You want honest. Honest is admitting that you're nothing but a privileged actor who's forgotten where he came from. Honest is acknowledging that you've made more money pretending to be tough than most people make in a lifetime. You think I've forgotten where I came from? Mark's voice was dangerously quiet now. You think because I've been successful. I don't remember what it was like to have nothing. To watch my mother work 3 jobs just to keep food on the table. Joy waved her hand dismissively. Oh, please. The poor little rich boy act doesn't work on me, Mark. You want to talk about your mother? Let's talk about how she must feel watching you attack people who are trying to make the world a better place. Make the world a better place. Mark's voice exploded with incredulity. By doing what? By sitting here every day dividing people? By making jokes about half the country? By treating anyone who disagrees with you like they are stupid? I treat stupid people like they are stupid. Joy shot back. And right now you're acting pretty stupid. The audience gasped. Several people in the front row looked genuinely shocked. This had crossed every line of professional decorum, and everyone knew it. Mark leaned forward, his voice dropping to that dangerous whisper that anyone who'd seen his movies would recognize. You know what's stupid, Joy? Thinking that because you have a platform, you have the right to be cruel. Thinking that because people tune in to watch you, they want to hear you tear people down. Cruel. Joy laughed again, but there was less confidence in it now. You think I'm being cruel? You haven't seen anything yet, sweetheart. Don't call me sweetheart, Mark said, his voice like ice. And yeah, you're being cruel. You're being exactly what's wrong with this business, with this whole industry. You're a bully with a microphone. Joy's face flushed red. A bully? I'm a bully. That's rich coming from someone who literally assaulted people on the street. At least I use my words, not my fists. There it is again, Mark said, shaking his head. You can't make your point without going personal. You can't win an argument on merit, so you drag up the past. You're pathetic. I'm pathetic. Joy's voice was shrill now. I'm not the one who built a career on playing the same character over and over again. I'm not the one who thinks being from Boston makes me authentic, and I'm not the one who thinks being mean makes me smart, Mark fired back. You sit there every day, Joy, and you poison the well. You take complex issues and turn them into punchlines. You take real people's struggles and make them part of your comedy routine. Joy stood up now, matching Mark's earlier move. You don't know what you're talking about. I've done more for social justice, for women's rights, for progressive causes than you've done in your entire career. By doing what? Mark challenged. By preaching to the choir, by making the same jokes to the same audience every day, by attacking anyone who dares to think differently, by using my platform to fight for what's right, Joy said, her voice getting more desperate. By standing up to bullies like you, bullies like me. Mark laughed, but there was no humor in it. Joy, look around. Look at what you're doing right now. You ambushed me. You brought me here under false pretenses. You're trying to humiliate me on national television, and you're calling me the bully. The silence in the studio was deafening. Even the crew members had stopped what they were doing to watch this unprecedented meltdown unfold. Whoopi made one more attempt at damage control. Maybe we should really take that break now. No, Joy said, her voice sharp. We're going to finish this conversation. Mark came here to promote his movie, and I think our audience deserves to know exactly what kind of person they're being asked to support. Mark's laugh was bitter. You really don't get it, do you? You think this is about me? This is about you, Joy. This is about how you've turned political discourse into a blood sport. This is about how you've made it impossible for people to have civil conversations about important issues. Civil conversations? Joy's voice was mocking. Like the civil conversation you had with that Vietnamese man you attacked. Oh, wait. That wasn't a conversation, was it? That was just you being violent. The studio went completely silent. Mark's face went white, then red, then white again. When he spoke, his voice was so quiet that the microphones barely picked it up. You know what, Joy? You just proved everything I've been saying. You're not interested in justice. You're not interested in progress. You're interested in hurting people. You're interested in winning at any cost. I'm interested in the truth, Joyce said. But her voice lacked conviction now. No, you're not, Mark said, standing up again. You're interested in your version of the truth. You're interested in making people who disagree with you look bad. You're interested in being the smartest person in the room, even if it means being the cruelest. Joy's composure was starting to crack. You don't get to lecture me about cruelty. You don't get to come on my show and tell me how to do my job, and you don't get to ambush people and then act like you're the victim when they fight back, Mark replied. This isn't journalism, Joy. This isn't even entertainment. This is just mean. The confrontation had reached a fever pitch with both participants pushed far beyond their comfort zones. The studio audience sat in stunned silence, watching what would become one of the most talked about moments in daytime television history. Security personnel had quietly moved closer to the set, and producers were frantically trying to figure out how to salvage the situation. Joy looked around the studio, suddenly seeming to realize that she had lost control of the situation entirely. Mark stood there, his chest rising and falling with barely controlled anger, waiting for her next move. The tension was so thick that everyone in the studio could feel it pressing down on them like a physical weight. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity before Joy made her fatal mistake. With a smirk that would haunt her for years to come, she delivered the blow that would end her career on The View. You know what, Mark? Maybe you should go back to your little Boston neighborhood and stay there. Leave the thinking to people who actually know what they are talking about. Mark's eyes narrowed to slits. My little Boston neighborhood. The one where real people live. The one where people work honest jobs and don't get paid millions to be nasty on television. Honest jobs. Joy scoffed. Like drug dealing. Like assault. Because that's what you were doing before Hollywood cleaned you up, wasn't it? That was it. The line had been crossed so far that there was no going back. Mark took a step toward Joy's chair and immediately 3 security guards moved in closer. You want to keep going down this road, Joy? Mark's voice was deadly calm because I can play this game, too. You want to talk about the past. Let's talk about your past. Let's talk about your failed comedy career. Let's talk about how you couldn't make it as a real entertainer, so you settled for being a professional hater. Joy's face went pale. You don't know what you're talking about, don't I? Mark's smile was cold. I know that you're a bitter woman who takes out her frustrations on anyone who dares to disagree with her. I know that you've made a career out of being divisive because you're not talented enough to be anything else. How dare you? Joy whispered, but her voice lacked its earlier fire. How dare I what? Tell the truth. You started this, Joy. You brought me here to humiliate me, to make me look bad in front of your audience. Well, congratulations. You've shown everyone exactly who you really are. Whoopi finally found her voice. Mike, I think maybe we should all take a step back here. No, Whoopi, Mark said, never taking his eyes off Joy. I think we should finish this. Joy wants to talk about character. Let's talk about character. What kind of character does it take to ambush someone on live television? What kind of character does it take to attack someone's past when they are trying to have a civilized conversation? Joy's hands were shaking now. You attacked me first. You called me out. I called out your behavior. Mark corrected. I never made it personal until you did. I never attacked your past until you attacked mine. The difference is I can defend my actions. Can you defend yours? The studio audience was completely riveted now. This had gone beyond entertainment into something raw and real that none of them had expected to witness. My actions. Joy's voice was getting shriller. My actions are fighting for what's right. My actions are standing up to people like you who think they can intimidate women. Intimidate women. Mark laughed, but it was a sound devoid of humor. Joy, you're not a victim here. You're the aggressor. You're the one who's been attacking me from the moment I sat down. You're the one who's been trying to intimidate me. I'm asking tough questions. Joy shot back. That's what journalists do. Journalists. Mark's voice was incredulous. You think you're a journalist? Journalists ask questions to get to the truth. You ask questions to make people look bad. You ask questions to create controversy. You're not a journalist, Joy. You're a shock jock with a daytime television show. The insult hit its mark. Joy's face crumpled for just a moment before the anger returned full force. Get out, she said quietly. What? Mark asked, genuinely surprised. I said get out, Joy repeated, her voice getting louder. Get off my show. Get out of my studio. I don't have to sit here and listen to this. Mark stared at her in disbelief. You're kicking me off. After you ambushed me? After you attacked my past? After you tried to humiliate me? Yes, Joy said, standing up and pointing toward the exit. I'm kicking you off. This is my show, and I decide who gets to stay. Mark shook his head slowly. You know what, Joy? This is perfect. This is absolutely perfect. You invite me here. You attack me. You make it personal. And when I defend myself, you kick me off. You've just proven every single point I made about you. Security, Joy called out, her voice cracking. Please escort Mr. Wahlberg off the set. The security guards looked uncertain. This wasn't a situation they'd ever had to deal with before. Mark wasn't being violent or threatening. He was just defending himself against what everyone could see was an unprovoked attack. It's okay, Mark said, raising his hands. I'll leave, but not because you're kicking me off. I'll leave because I have too much respect for myself to sit here and be abused by someone who's forgotten what decency looks like. He started walking toward the exit, then turned back one more time. You know what the saddest part is, Joy? You had a chance to have a real conversation today. You had a chance to bridge some divides to show that people with different opinions can still talk to each other with respect. Instead, you chose to be exactly what everyone expects you to be. You chose to be the villain. Joy's face was red with fury and embarrassment. Just get out. I'm going, Mark said calmly. But I want your audience to remember this moment. I want them to remember who started this fight and who tried to end it. I want them to remember who was respectful and who was cruel. I want them to remember who acted like a professional and who acted like a bully. As Mark walked off the set, the studio remained in stunned silence. Joy stood there shaking with rage and humiliation, suddenly realizing that she had just handed Mark the biggest victory of his career. She had proven every point he'd made about her character, and she'd done it in front of millions of viewers. The cameras kept rolling as Mark disappeared through the exit door, leaving behind a studio full of shocked faces and a host who had just committed professional suicide on live television. The confrontation was over, but the damage was done. Joy had gotten her fight, but she had lost the war. Whoopi tried to salvage the situation. We'll be right back after this commercial break, but everyone knew there was no coming back from what had just happened. The View had just witnessed the most explosive confrontation in its history, and it was all Joy's fault. The aftermath would be swift and brutal. Social media would explode with clips of the confrontation. News outlets would analyze every word, every gesture, every moment of the fight. And through it all, one thing would be crystal clear. Joy Behar had finally gone too far. Mark Wahlberg had come to The View to promote his movie, but he'd left as the winner of the most one-sided battle in daytime television history. He'd been kicked off the show, but he'd walked away with his dignity intact. Joy, on the other hand, had lost something that day that she would never get back. The respect of her audience and the credibility of her voice. The confrontation was over, but the conversation it started would continue for years to come. And every time someone talked about what happened that day, they would remember who was the professional and who was the bully. They would remember who tried to have a civilized conversation and who chose to make it personal. They would remember who walked away with their head held high and who was left standing in the wreckage of their own.